drink that I might add is not cold. And there was Mark standing beside me, and I looked at my watch and I says, "Aren't you supposed to be in there?" He said, "I'm getting a drink right now, and then I can wait." So, Mark, without further ado, let's have you take 10 or 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to be with Brad. I'm lying. Let me just talk about where we're going today. First of all, this topic is far too broad for us to talk about in any detail. It is risk management in HR practices. And there's so much detail we could focus on. What I want to do today is talk about doing the risk management process of assessing risk, identifying and assessing, and then determining what to do about those risks. And this is going to be kind of a practical exercise that we're going to do together. I don't really want you guys to ask any questions. I just want you to participate when I want you to. Are we clear?
You want us to say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, do you know who these two people are? Anybody? The upper picture is Robert Scott, Arctic or Antarctic explorer, if you will. And this is Roald Amundsen, Norwegian, who was also an Arctic explorer. And they both had a goal. Their goal was to get down to the South Pole. And the year is 1911. Now, Scott had the best financed expedition of all time. It says best expedition verb. I left the E off. Sorry. Motorized. He had motorized sledges, not just ones that dogs pulled or horses pulled. He also had the traditional ones for use ponies and others that are used some dogs. He was using the best explored trail there was, and he was combining the goal of reaching the pole with the goal of obtaining substantial scientific research. Now, Roald Amundsen, on the other hand, had a poorly financed expedition. He had the traditional sledges, he had dogs, he was going on an untried path, he was using cross-country skis, and his only goal is to get to the pole and back. Now, knowing these facts, who are you going to go with?
Scott.
Scott. How many say Scott? How many say Amundsen? How many are sleeping?
How many are being set up?
Are you being set up? Okay. Well, okay. Over on the left is Scott. No mechanics for the motorized sledges. No replacement parts. They leave behind the only expert skier in the group to make the final assault on the pole. Nobody has learned to ski well on the team. He chose who was going to be on the team just days before they left on the final assault. He had 19 ponies. 10 of them were lost accidentally in some training before him. He failed to inspect the sledges to find any defects in the sledges. Actually, both teams bought sledges from the same producer. They chose to man-haul the sledges, that means pulling them by walking, rather than using dogs for the final assault. Failed to provide fresh meat and not enough rations if there was bad weather or something that held them up. Now, who are you going to go with? Yeah, he spent years planning it. Planned for contingencies, had extra supplies. His entire team was made up of expert skiers. They were all Norwegians. They were born with skis on. All the salt team members were known from the beginning. They had 52 dogs, which means they had extra dogs. They didn't have to have them pulling all the time. They'd actually have a special sledge created that would have a compass in it. And so they didn't have to stop and make calculations all the time. They had a sledge repair expert who actually reduced the weight of the sledges. They had a higher calorie diet, and they had dogs. And the interesting thing about dogs is they planned to actually harvest the dogs. And this is important to have fresh meat, otherwise scurvy would set in. Now, here's the good news. Both teams made it. The Norwegians made it first. Scott's team came in second, but they made it to the pole. The Norwegians arrived 4 December 1911. They had abundant rations. They were skiing. They had fresh meat for the dogs. No starvation, no scurvy, no death. Their round trip took 99 days. Leaving at approximately the same time, Scott's team arrived over a month later. Man hauling required more energy. They needed more calories. They weren't prepared for that. They became weaker. They suffered from scurvy because they did not have fresh meat. 2 men died by mid-March. The last 3 died in a tent just 11 miles from a life-preserving supply depot that, if they had put in the right place to begin with, would have been there with 20 miles to spare. They also had, because they were doing an expedition, they'd been carrying around 30 pounds of rock on their sled. Why? Well, so one of the key things here was fresh meat from dogs. Now, we recently had our family pet die, and I've been doing some experiments. And I brought some samples for you. You don't want any? No. Fluffy would really be disappointed. Go ahead, anybody that wants to sample that. It actually tastes like
Chicken.
beef. It may be similar to what we had for lunch. Okay. What Scott says
Yeah.
in one of his last writings in his journal, among the things he says, "I do not regret this journey, which has shown that Englishmen can endure hardships, help one another, meet death with as great fortitude as ever in the past. We took risks. We knew we took them. Things have come out against us, and therefore we have no cause for complaint, but bow to the will of Providence." I've entitled this exercise to avoid adventure. Roald Amundsen said about this: adventure is just bad planning. What we want to do with risk management is plan and incorporate the possibilities of risk, and then plan to address those things. And there's a lesson for us as human resource people in Scott's failure. He failed to adequately assess and address the risks that he was facing. Misunderstanding or lack of agreement on goals. So a part of the process of going through risk management is understanding specifically what our goals are things that we do. He ignored the experiences of others. He took ponies. Now, Shackleton had tried to get to the pole and failed just a year before this. And he had used ponies. And they were not right situated for that adventure. So he had turned back. But here Scott used ponies. Inadequate planning and follow-through. Inadequate tools, whether ponies or motorized sledges that failed to work. He didn't choose the right personnel in making the final push. He didn't choose the strongest, the best, or he didn't use the skiers. He failed to provide adequate nourishment for them. Failed to inspect and repair the equipment, and poor or ineffective training. They could have all been trained to ski properly and to use dogs properly. They didn't do that. There was poor communication about duties and expectations. In fact, the people back at the base camp thought they were not supposed to go rescue. And so they delayed their rescue efforts that might have saved. So the first thing we want to do is assess our environment. This is the Beardmore Glacier that Scott had to go up and get on top of in order to make this all to the pole. Looks pretty daunting, doesn't it? Okay, there are categories of risk. Some are strategic. Anything that is going to limit or impair the ability of the organization to achieve strategic objectives is what we call strategic risk. Excuse me. Some examples of strategic objectives would be adequate financing for our operations, adequate personnel, those kinds of things. Compliance is anything that we have regulations or legislation about. Closely associated to compliance risk is legislative or regulatory risk when, in fact, the legislation changes and that creates a new problem or compliance risk for us. Operational risks are those that affect the effective and efficient work of the organization. And financial risk, obviously any kind of financial impairment to the organization. When it comes to human resource activities, what kinds of risks are we going to see? All of the above, right? And particularly compliance risk. Okay. So we're going to assess the lay of the land. When it comes to the county executive, what are their roles in human resource? They're going to approve and amend or reject personnel rules before the adoption. They approve, amend, or reject the pay plan, and they can recommend personnel rules. This is according to our own state statutes, right? So we already know that we're going to have to work in the environment of our commissioners, our executives, such. County departments and agencies have their own things that they can do when it comes to HR. Establish the initial job descriptions, recommend position classifications, make final selections for promotions and hires, conduct performance evaluations. Boy, if only they would, right? Discipline employees. That's what they do. Who else is involved in this? This is participation.
HR directors and supervisors.
I'm sorry?
HR directors and supervisors.
Yes. Okay. So the director of personnel has these responsibilities to advise the county legislative and executive bodies on the use of human resources. Develop and implement programs for the improvement of the employee effectiveness. Recommend personnel rules. Design and administer the pay plan. Design and administer classification plan. Monitor compliance with the EEO, etc. And maintain central personnel records. Is there any risk in any of these activities? Okay. Of course. We have to create personnel rules, correct? And so the rules, by statute, require us to address recruiting, job-related minimum requirements, position classification, records of performance, all of these things. And it's a daunting task. We don't get to control all of it, but some of it is ours to do alone. Along with these state regulations that address county HR, we have a whole battery of federal law. Fair Labor Standards Act, as you know, serves as a backdrop for a lot of what we do. I'm not going to spend any time talking about this, but just wanted to talk about just that it's there and it underlies a lot of what we do. So I want to get right now to the tools that we are going to use in HR. We could use these various efficient sledges that the Norwegians use, or we could use tools that require a lot of tinkering and don't function so well. Actually, we have to use both kinds of things, and both of them are in need of constant repair. So I've divided it up into 5 areas: recruitment, hiring, onboarding, job classification, analysis, description, payroll administration, benefits and leave administration, employee performance, discipline, and termination. In a general way, that's most of what we do. Is that right? Okay, that's okay. So let's talk first about recruiting. Now, the exercise that we're going to do here is I'm going to solicit your input on what our goals are in recruiting. Then I'm going to solicit what kinds of activities are included in recruitment, and then what are the risks, and then we'll talk about maybe some strategies for allaying some of those risks. Okay, so first of all, what is our goal in recruitment? Why do we do recruitment? What do we want? I'm sorry?
To hire manpower.
Hire? Okay. What about that?
Best qualified candidate.
The best qualified? Is that what you said? I'm sorry, I have hearing aids.
What?
That hurt. I'm stopping now, I won't be able to. Okay.
The best fit. The best fit.
The best, okay, most qualified and best fit for what? For a certain pay that we're authorized to offer, right? Okay. And then, so what are the things that we do? What are the steps that we take to do recruitment and onboard?
Define the job responsibilities and put together a job description.
A job description, great, yes. So we have to analyze and do that. What else do we do?
Pre-qualifications.
Pre-qualifications, example.
A list of attributes you want the candidate to have before they walk in the door.
Great, great. What else?
Advocate for the job.
We're going to add and interview. You're going to and okay. So these are things. Some of the things I put up. I'm not saying this list is exhaustive. exhaustive, but posting, advertising, we're going to have an application that we're going to fill out. We're going to screen them, we're going to do interviews, we have a selection process. What about social media? Can we use that as part of our evaluation process? Okay. Conditional offer, background check, motor vehicle check. We're going to do these things? And do any of these things have risk associated with them?
Everyone else.
Yeah, do. Darn it, but that's, first of all, we could hire people that are bad fit for our organization. We could hire people that are poor performers, or they have engaged in criminal activity. They could not be reliable people. We have increased turnover. But the ones that we think mostly about, I think, are the non-compliance concerns that we have. Federal law, there may be discrimination, there are state laws addressing those things as well. We may be subject to negligent hiring. If we engage in a lot of looking at social media related to these people, we may actually find ourselves violating privacy. We may know things we shouldn't know before we should know them. And of course, there's always the risk that regulations and legislation have changed the requirements. So, some of the things that we can do from a risk management perspective, train the recruiters and interviewers to ask the right question. In fact, sit down with them and create questions for the interviews, right? We need to monitor changes in regulations, legislation, update our forms and paperwork to make sure that they aren't violating the law somehow. It's an important part of the process to orient employees on job expectations and, well, a variety of things. And train our employees on their jobs. And, of course, if we're doing background checks, their financial history, we have to be justified in doing it. So compliance with the FCRA, the important part of this process. Okay. Any other recommendations or suggestions on the recruiting process? We're doing.
Mark?
Yes, ma'am.
Tana kind of.
I just have a question. So, like, my career prior to coming to Morgan County a month ago was in banking. And one of the things, like, even though I was never a teller or per se didn't handle cash, I was just asked the question, does the treasurer's office or maybe the clerk's office or something, I get the elected officials that maybe wouldn't apply to, but any county employee, do they do a credit check? Because by the mere fact of working for the bank, you had to have your credit check pulled because there could be a conflict there.
Right. And it would make sense in a bank setting,
Right.
but not for every job.
Right,
in
I
the
know,
county.
but I mean the ones that handle cash.
Yes, absolutely.
I just know if they did that.
Are
I don't know
there
if there's
any
something to do. I just
treasurers?
wondered, I was curious.
We do
Probably
that.
not, but I just didn't know.
Do you have something? You look like you were going.
no.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that would be a good thing to do where it's appropriate. Okay. So let's talk about job classification, job comp class, description, job analysis. Why would we do a job classification? No, this is where you're supposed to stay. Lena?
To justify pay ranges and differences in pay, would be one reason.
Yeah, one reason certainly to justify what we're going to say.
Exemptions and non-exemptions.
I'm sorry?
Exemptions and non-exemptions. Who's
Okay,
that
excellent,
standard?
excellent. We want to make sure we're complying with FLSA, right? So that would be an important part of it. What about a staffing plan? Why would that be important? I mean, besides the fact that we're required to do these kinds of things under statute, why? What's our goal? We want to have, I think, predictable, fair, reasonable pay, job requirements, and expectations. And we want to have reliable information for budgeting and forecasting as well. And all of those things can be helped along if we are doing job comp class, description, and analysis. Analyzing job requirements to determine their skills, knowledges, abilities, duties, compensation, all right? We're defining employees in terms of whether they're career service, temporary, seasonal, independent contractors, and FLSA exempt or non-exempt. Having a staffing plan, and having plans that deal with layoff and RIFs. Is that important? Yeah. All of those things. Is there risk associated with any of these activities?
Absolutely.
Okay. What risk do you see? I can move to the next slide if you're reluctant to answer. Okay, and these are just a few things that I have identified. Job ambiguities create performance management issues. If we don't have an accurate job description, how are we going to hold people accountable, right? Actual duties do not meet up with the description because of job drift, right? People are actually starting to do things other than what their description says. The essential functions of the job are not identified. Now, we are going to have a great presentation the final hour about job descriptions. So I won't get too far into that. Fair labor standards, as we talked about. What about the issue of permanent temporary employees? Is that a problem?
Yeah, those two words conflict.
Okay. Of course, the Affordable Care Act implicated there. The ADA, do I have enough age? Yes, ADAA, and equal pay issues, discriminatory requirements. We aren't required to discriminate, so I think non-discriminatory requirements. Thanks for laughing. Okay, internal equity concerns. All of those issues come into play. So what are our risk management alternatives? One thing that we want to do is consistently update descriptions. Do audits to determine if people are still doing the same job, if things change. Clearly identify the essential functions. Coordinate the expectations from the job description with department management. We have to work with our departments in order to reach these. A market study, internal equity analysis, a fully developed staffing plan. All of these things will help us avoid risk. We're doing them continuously and effectively. Payroll administration. How many of your HR departments actually do payroll? So maybe not all of you. This is a sledge, not to be confused with a sled, which would be pulled by dogs and would be fairly lightweight. And this is man hauling. What these guys are doing is pulling a sledge. Now think about doing that for 15 miles a day. I think that's bad planning. I think I'd rather harvest dogs. You know. Okay. All right. So what are our goals in payroll administration? Orderly, accurate, timely pay. Right. Any other goals we might have? Maybe if you work for a certain city in this state, you might have the goal of getting funds for yourself that you shouldn't have. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, activities. Time entry is the first part, right? Employee changes and benefits and such things, you're going to have to incorporate those things. You have to calculate the taxes. You have to calculate the correct deductions. You have to deposit or distribute the paychecks or direct deposit. You have to deposit the withheld taxes in the right places. And you're required to document, report your processes. Any other things that you want to bring up here? Things that you're required to do? Okay. So those are the activities. Any risk in any of these? Yeah. Quite a bit of risk. One of the ones that all the payroll textbooks talk about is payroll fraud. Advances made to employees that are not paid back. How many of you do advances? Good answer. Buddy punching. When we have an employee punching for someone else, does that ever happen in your organizations? Ghost employees. That has happened in this state recently. Okay, unauthorized hours. Does that ever happen? Yeah, one of the things we talked about in, I think, what was his name that talked earlier? Talking about just that kind of thing, unauthorized hours that were required to pay anyway. Can we discipline those folks? Absolutely, but we're going to be required to pay. Reporting failures. If you fail to report to URS, say, in a timely fashion, not that I would know anything about this, but would there be fines?
Yeah.
Could there be fines? And delinquent interest payments, right? Fair Labor Standards Act violations, pay rate errors, all sorts of things can go wrong, calculation errors, and erroneous data that's coming in regarding benefits and deductions. All of that can negatively impact your payroll administration. So as you're doing each of these HR activities, you need to be mindful of the risks and then come up with a solution to address those risks. One of the most effective things you can do is audit your processes. Have supervisor approved time entry. I mean, this is a basic. You should be having that anyway. So they approve the time entry, overtime, and pay changes. Verified change authorizations, meaning the employee, if they're changing due to a life change or whatever, or open enrollment, they're changing their benefits. We need to have a signature from the employee. Change tracking law. Error checking reports as you go through the process. You calculate different ways to see if you are, in fact, captured. Calculation verification. If you're doing it by hand, have a second person involved in the verification. Payroll register matching to supporting documents, match time entry to employee list. That's a good one. Make sure everybody that you're paying is an employee, right? And documenting everything that you do. Benefits and leave administration. Yes, ma'am.
We're just making the back of each other.
Oh. This will be available. There's the ponies. Ponies are great, actually, for hauling sledges. Just not all the way to the South Pole. They actually pull more weight than dogs can, obviously. They're stronger. But they tend, in highly drifted snow, they tend to step through. This makes it really difficult. I don't know why I have this picture here, but there you go. Benefits. What? Wait. Tell me, this is participation point. Why do we have benefits for our employees? Why do we include fringe benefits?
Because the pay's too low.
That's one reason, yeah.
Yeah, people need benefits when you have health insurance. It's nice to have paid leave when your kids get sick, so you're not out money, so you have to take off.
All right. And so this might be an incentive for what?
Recruiting and retention.
I'm sorry?
Recruiting and retention.
Recruiting and retention. Absolutely. Okay. So our real goal is to incentivize long-term employment with the entity by eliminating or mitigating loss due to certain life uncertainties. True? Yeah. I mean, that's really the major thing. So we have pension, example, URS, 401ks, HRAs, HSAs, medical coverage, and now we're required to do that. Dental, vision, LTE, COBRA, life insurance. What else are you offering your employees? Pay time off. Okay, yeah. Now I've broken out here leave. I'm going to talk about leave in just a minute. Yeah. So are there risks associated with? Obviously there are. When you do enrollments, any number of things can go wrong when you're assessing or you have certain job or requirements for eligibility, life changes. A lot of things can go wrong. External plan compliance regulations, your own internal plan requirements. Have you communicated effectively with the employees about the benefit, and have you complied with reporting requirements? And a ton of other things you might want to mention.
Mark?
Yes.
I realize we started you a few minutes late, but Rick is here also ready to start, so can we
Okay.
wrap up?
All right. So really, what time did I started at 3:30, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm skipping. Affordable Care Act. I wasn't going to talk about that anyway, but just leave administration. Just a host of things that might go wrong. Yeah. Okay. I'm skipping. Compensatory time, how that relates to pregnant employees, USERA, time off with military, all of those things. Employee performance. This is Captain Scott showing signs of frostbite. This is applicable. Why are we going to do performance evaluation and discipline? It is for this reason: protect the interests of the county. All right, and at the same time providing for fairness to the employee to address performance issues and giving them a chance to have a say. Obviously, we're dedicated to the idea of progressive discipline. But a lot of things can go wrong in the process. We can subject ourselves to claims of due process violations, unequal treatment, which leads to claims of discrimination. One of the key things, of course, is to have an opportunity to be heard before the discipline is imposed, particularly when it involves taking away the reasonable expectation of continued employment. Posting requirements, all sorts of things. Okay. I have to be done in 5 minutes. This is what Captain Scott said. This is one of his final entries. Had we lived, I should have had a tale to tell of the hardihood, the endurance and courage of my companions, which would have stirred the heart of every Englishman. These rough notes and our dead bodies must tell the tale. When the bodies of Scott and his 3 companions that had survived that far with him, basically 2 companions, I'm sorry, it was clear that he was the last to die. What are our most common sources of risk when it comes to the HR practice? Failure to comply with state and federal laws and regulations. Failure to comply with our own policies. That's never happened, has it? Failure to communicate necessary information in the form of requirements, duties, and expectations to supervisors and employees alike. Failure to consistently apply the rules within the organization, subjecting us to claims of discrimination, harassment. So what are our most useful tools from a risk management perspective to address those risks? First of all, do what Scott did not. Understand the hazards associated with each area. In this case, HR. Education and training at all levels of the organization. Auditing and updating policies and procedures. Updating your job description. Communication, whether it's about benefits, whether it's about leave policies or job expectations, the rules. Communication is key. Consistent application and enforcement of the rules. And to the extent that you in your capacities can influence that, that's key. Getting and applying legal and other expert advice. One thing Scott did not do was follow the advice and learn from the experience of others. So that's critical. Who can we get advice from besides our legal department? Who are the experts that we can go to for, say, benefits and that sort of thing? If you have a broker or advisor in these areas, you're going to rely on what they're telling you. That's important. Follow that advice. It's important to document what you have done. It's important to have adequate insurance for when things do go wrong. Again, Captain Scott. He says, I cannot see that any plan would be altered if we were to do it again. The margin for bad weather was ample, according to all experience, and this stormy December, our finest month, is a thing that the most cautious organizer might not have been prepared to encounter. Essentially, blaming the weather for the failure of his team. What did Amundsen say? He says, here's the greatest fact. The way in which the expedition is equipped, the way in which every difficulty is foreseen, and precautions taken for meeting or avoiding. Who did risk management? Amundsen did. He looked at the risk and he took precautions for every contingency. He says, victory awaits him who has everything in order. Luck, people call it. Defeat is certain for him who has neglected to take the necessary precautions in time. This is called bad luck. It's not luck, right? Thanks for giving me the time to present today. I appreciate your participation. And look at that, 4:16. Thanks.